So it's fun for me to hear that both of you mentioned, at least you in private, you know now, how painfully shy both of you were, or at least private, anyways. That's not the image I would have. But we won't pursue that too much longer because I can see Sinclair looking at me, wondering if I'm going to ask another personal question. But since both of you mentioned John Calvin, and if someone in the audience were to say, hey, I want to pick up a Calvin writing today, and I want to start here, what would that book recommendation be, either by Calvin or someone writing about Calvin?
I think my answer would be it depends who they were. But my instinctive answer would be just read the Institutes. They'll surprise you. Because they're not what you expect. They're not. They're really nothing like the image of Calvin that most people have. And I just remember, Joel, actually, when I was 14, maybe 15, I must have been 15, my history master at school, at whose memorial service I spoke just 2 weeks ago, was giving out, this is the only time this ever happened in my schooling, where a teacher asked me to do something publicly, to speak in public. We wrote to our teachers, we didn't speak to them. And he was giving out exercises in the church history class, and we did European history in the 16th and 17th century, well, 15th, 16th, 17th century. And he knew I had become a Christian. He said, Ferguson, he said, you will give a 15-minute presentation on either Martin Luther or John Calvin. And I chose Calvin partly because I thought he had misinterpreted Calvin and what he had said. And I went along to the local lending library and I took out Francois Vendel's book on Calvin and read it. And I realized then, I hadn't then read the Institutes, but I realized then this is totally different from what certainly by that time in Scotland was the public presentation of Calvin. Calvin Klein actually ran an ad campaign in Edinburgh a number of years ago that I noticed, and the big ad line, huge billboards, Calvin is back. And nobody in Edinburgh knew what they were talking about. I mean, some wacko in an office somewhere in New York had thought, Edinburgh, Reformation, this will really sell our stuff. And it was like, well, who is Calvin? You know, we didn't even know he had been here before.
That's a fascinating ad, though.
Yeah.
Very nice. What would you, Institutes similarly?
Well, I'd agree with Sinclair. It depends on the person and how much background they have. For a complete neophyte, it might be good to read the 1536 Institutes, the first edition, which Calvin wrote very much as an introduction. All of the final Institutes is great, but he is adding, and there are more controversial, what's the word I'm looking for? He's answering people who are wrong in greater detail. So it does get a little, in points, a little more weedy. But
the 36 follows more the Apostles' Creed outline, right?
Right.
So that makes it an easy introduction. Overall.
Yeah, and it's what Sinclair was saying. It's the sweetness of the gospel, the call to faith, and assurance.